Introduction. Over the past few years, research papers have been written about the latest developments in neuroscience. Neuroplasticity, mirror cells, neurogenesis, and the social brain are all ideas that have been talked about on the radio and in the news. The way we think about psychotherapy has changed a lot because of the progress in neuroscience. If you are like most people, you'll want to know how these changes can help you in your everyday life. This course is based on recent advances in neuroscience and treatments that have been shown to work, the types of treatment that have been found to work best. This is a practical course that tells you how to actually change your brain based on well-researched principles that work. This course will show you how to change your life by changing the way your brain works. You can't change what you think and how you feel unless you change your brain. We all get worried or sad every once in a while. You'll learn how to deal with normal amounts of these feelings, how to limit them, and how to get the most out of life. You'll also learn healthy habits that will make your brain last longer and help you live a full, happy life without putting limits on yourself. In each session of this course, we'll talk about some of the most important new developments in neuroscience and show you how to apply them to different parts of your life so you can thrive. Firing the right cells together. Brain science is going through a big change. Not too long ago, people thought that the brain you had when you were born was the brain you would have when you died, and that the number of brain cells you had when you were born was the most you would ever have. In addition, people used to think that the brain was hardwired to work in certain ways. It is not true, it turns out. The brain is not hardwired. Instead, it is soft-wired by what it does. People have long thought that our genes decide our thoughts, feelings, and actions. During the 1980s and 1990s, the news was full of stories about how our genes decide everything that happens to us. For example, there were stories about identical twins who grew up in different places, but still had the same habits or liked the same color. People thought that these stories showed how powerful genetics could be. Neuroscience tells us now that the brain can change in many ways. The brain you were born with changes as you go through life. All the time, your brain changes. The brain can make new cells. Genes tell you about your strengths and weaknesses, but they don't tell you what to think, feel, or do. It turns out that people's actions are not set in stone. Even the way you act can turn genes on or off. This course shows you how to use the latest findings in neuroscience. I'll explain what each of the following things is and how they can affect your life. Neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, social systems such as mirror neurons, nutritional neuroscience. The new findings in neuroscience show how you can make the most of your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. I'll tell you how to use these findings to change how your brain works so you can feel calm and happy. So much depends on these two skills. By learning to be calm and positive, you can improve your ability to focus, face challenges, reach your goals, and be happy. Learning to be calm makes you feel less tense, anxious, and stressed. However, if you don't keep them in check, some parts of your brain tend to overreact and cause you to feel more tension, anxiety, and stress than you need to. In this course, I'll explain how to rewire those parts. The bottom line is that how you train yourself to think, feel, and act regularly will rewire your brain and help you stay calm and focused. We know a lot more about how the brain works and how to fix parts of the brain that are out of sync with the rest, because they are either too active or not active enough because of discoveries in neuroscience. I'll explain how those parts of your brain tend to become overactive and out of control when you feel down, lose your optimism, and only see the bad things in life. As a result, things don't look as good as they could, and the glass looks half empty, even though it could also look half full. I'll tell you how to turn on the parts of your brain that need to be balanced and controlled so that you feel good about your life and see the glass as at least half full. You'll learn how to relax when you are stressed and cheer up when you are sad. You'll also learn how to improve your memory, have better relationships, and get a good night's sleep. These things change how your brain works, making you calmer and happier. Nurtured nature. Learning how the brain works are the first thing you should do to rewire it. Your brain responds to and interacts with the outside world. We've come a long way from the old nature versus nurture debate, and now we can nurture nature. Since your brain is not hardwired but rather soft-wired, your experiences greatly impact how you shape your nature. Even though it only weighs 3 pounds, the brain is one of the most complex organs in the body. It has 100 billion nerve cells, which are called neurons, and a lot of other cells that help them work. That's the same as how many stars are in our galaxy. Let's start with how the brain is put together. Neurons are grouped in parts of the brain called modules. These include the cortex, which is the outer layer and has 2 hemispheres, the 4 lobes, and the subcortical modules below the cortex. A lot has been said about the 2 halves of the brain. People with right brains were said to be more creative and spiritual than those with left brains. People with left brains were said to be more rigid and picky. That fad, which started in the 1970s, is still strong, but many people who helped start have given up on it. In everything you do, the 2 sides of your brain work together. The 2 sides of the brain are joined together by a band of fibers called the corpus callosum. It makes connections between neurons that fire in different places, giving everything you do and think more depth and dimension. A woman's corpus callosum is thicker than that of a man. It means that a woman's 2 sides of the brain work better together. As a result, the brain of a woman is more balanced. The male brain has an asymmetrical torque, which means that the right frontal lobe is bigger than the left frontal lobe, and the left occipital or back of the head lobe is bigger than the right occipital lobe. The brain's right hemisphere processes visual and spatial information for both men and women. It lets you see the big picture. The right side of the brain pays more attention to the overall situation. On the other hand, the left hemisphere is better at organizing details, groups, and information linearly, like language. When you learn something new, the right side of your brain is more active. Once you know something well enough that you don't have to think about it, the left side of your brain takes over. It is another reason why the left side of the brain deals with language. The right side of the brain is more emotional because it has better connections with the parts of the brain below the cortex. In other words, it's better to figure out how someone feels when talking. Women are thought to be more intuitive than men because their brains have a better connection between the 2 sides than men. As a result, women often give words more emotional meaning than men do. Each half of the brain has 4 lobes: the frontal lobe, the middle or parietal lobe, the side or temporal lobe, the back or occipital lobe. Each has its skills. For example, when you like something, like a chair, you sit on at a friend's house, your thoughts and feelings about it are spread out all over your brain. Your right parietal lobe helps you remember the chair's beautiful shape. Your left temporal lobe remembers the words your friend used to describe his trip to Costa Rica, and your right temporal lobe remembers the tone of his voice. Then, as you leave the room, you remember looking back at the chair and seeing its deep cinnamon color through your occipital lobe. The part of the brain responsible for language has more neurons in women. This advantage with words starts to show up in the first 2 years of life, when girls learn to talk about 6 months before boys do. When creating verbal plans, women use the left hippocampus, a memory-related part of the brain, more than men. Men usually have better visual and spatial skills than women because the right hippocampus in men is more active than in women. The frontal lobe, which makes up about 20% of the human brain, is the most recent part of our brains to have evolved. In contrast, a cat's frontal lobe takes up only about 3.5% of its brain. The frontal lobe is the last part of a person's brain to grow up. It doesn't finish growing up until sometime in their 30s. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, at the front of the frontal lobe, is responsible for many of our most complex cognitive, behavioral, and emotional skills. For example, the PFC lets you build a moral system and act on it because it lets you put your own needs aside and think about the needs of others. The PFC is part of a system that allows you to care about others. If your prefrontal cortex or PFC is damaged, you are more likely to act in ways that hurt other people or are not planned. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is one of the PFC's most important, or DLPFC parts. The word dorsal means top or fin, while lateral means side. The orbital frontal cortex, or OFC, is the other important prefrontal area. It gets its name because it is right behind the eyes. The DLPFC is very important for higher-level thinking, paying attention, and remembering things in the short term, also called working memory because it processes what you are working on at any time. You can usually keep working on something in your mind for 20 to 30 seconds. The DLPFC is the last part of the brain to develop fully and is also the first to weaken as you age. It is why people sometimes walk into a room on purpose and then forget what they will do there. On the other hand, the DLPFC helps you figure out hard problems, so it keeps strong links with the hippocampus, which helps you remember things. On the other hand, the OFC seems more connected to the parts of the brain that deal with emotions, like the amygdala, which makes you feel fear. The OFC develops early in life and is closely linked to the social brain. If you didn't have your OFC, you would be like Phineas Gage. During an accident at work, a steel rod went through Gage's brain and stuck into his OFC. The rest of his brain was fine. Gage was still smart, but he lost a lot of his ability to control his impulses. He used to be a respected boss, but now he is unstable, rude, and hard to get along with. It is a big change from how he used to be, where he kept his feelings to himself. Gage was eventually forced to work in a circus freak show. 20 years after the injury, he died in San Francisco without money. The Harvard Medical School has his skull on display. The OFC thrives on close relationships, which are very important to it. If these relationships are trusting and helpful, the OFC will be better able to keep your emotions in check. Unlike the DLPFC, the OFC doesn't change much as it ages. Faces are easy to remember for both young and old people. Lastly, the prefrontal cortex on the left and the prefrontal cortex on the right differ. The right PFC can help you think ahead and figure out what's going on in a given situation. It helps you plan, stay on track toward your overall goal, and understand metaphors. For example, if someone says, Michael Phelps is a fish, you'll know what they mean about the Olympic swimmer if you have the right PFC. On the other hand, your left PFC helps you pay attention to specifics, like how many points were scored in the second half of a football game. As we conclude this eye-opening journey into the world of neuroplasticity, take a moment to reflect on the profound implications of this research on our lives. The human brain's incredible capacity to change, adapt, and grow is not just a scientific concept. It is a testament to our resilience and potential. Imagine a world where we can unlock our mind's full potential, overcome challenges, and create a brighter future for ourselves and future generations. By purchasing our book on Amazon, you will not only gain valuable insights into neuroplasticity, but also contribute to a greater cause. Every book sale supports our ongoing research, enabling us to explore new frontiers in brain science and develop innovative therapies. Remember the power that resides within your brain and embrace the possibilities that neuroplasticity offers. Join us in our mission to revolutionize our understanding of the human mind. Together, we can create a world where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential and lead fulfilling lives. So please, support our research by buying our book on Amazon today. Help us make a difference in the lives of countless individuals, now and for generations to come. Thank you, and let's build a better future together.